Hey there, Rocky fans. I'm Matt Gross, aka the Rhode Island Rocky fan, and this is Purple Row Video. Today I want to talk about a couple of positives that we've seen so far of the Rockies, a couple of negatives, which one may weigh more, and a rule in Major League Baseball that I think is about to be exposed very, very much, very, very soon. So, a couple of things to talk about. First of all, let's start off the negative to get that out of the way. The number one thing that we've already been talking about, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with this, is Rex Brothers. That is absolutely a problem. I don't think this is going to end well for the Rockies. When you lose velocity and control, it typically doesn't end well 3 months later where he's just going to regain what he had the last couple of seasons. That is a very big problem. The other thing that I think is discouraging that we've seen so far, and Jeff talked about today in his piece, and that's the inability and in some cases the unwillingness of Walt Weiss to allow the starters to go deep into games, and the way that's going to tax the bullpen. That's something that Northsider is always preaching, and he's absolutely right. The bullpen is going to break down, particularly with Rex Brothers not there. So you kind of take a combination of the Brett Anderson injury. He's a guy who can get deep into games, so you wipe out some innings there. You lose faith in Rex Brothers, so you can't use him in the late innings. That kind of moves everybody else up, Ottavino and Belisle and Logan all kind of up a slot. And then the Brett Anderson injury also forces you to put Franklin Morales back in the rotation for a little while. So what ends up happening is you really end up taxing the bullpen from 3 different directions because you're getting less innings out of Anderson, you're losing the reliability of Brothers, you have to take Morales out, and all of a sudden, you're going to start taxing this bullpen very, very quickly, particularly if Jorge De La Rosa cannot get it together. That's why tonight's start is big. He hasn't gotten past 4.1 innings yet in any of his starts. So tonight's start, you really just hope he can get deeper in the game to save the bullpen. Nicasio, and that's also why Nicasio's start was so big last night. Not just because he won, that was obviously first and foremost, but he got through 6 innings when he was over 30 pitches and looked like he was going to get a knockout punch delivered to him in the first inning before he got Yonder Alonso to line into that double play where Drew Stubbs made the great play in center field last night. So the bullpen's definitely a problem. There are ways to fix it if the starters can start going deeper into games, if, Weiss plays his cards right. But it definitely is concerning. And then the biggest thing, obviously, with Brothers has already been talked about enough. But that whole Brothers thing is absolutely part of the problem they're going to have with the bullpen. The other thing is, and this is something you never really know, is I don't think that the Rockies have faced very good teams so far in the schedule. They hit Miami off the front end. I don't think Miami's very good, but I think they're better than last year. And I also think that the Rockies kind of hit them in the wrong spot in their building with Jose Fernandez and Nathan Eovaldi in the first 2 games. They probably should have won more. They should have gotten at least a split of that series, but, not terrible. The 2 games they faced at home, Arizona is absolute garbage. I didn't think they'd be good, when they lost Patrick Corbin. This is now, they've got major, major problems. You're never as bad as you look, but this is the team that in all likelihood is going to lose at least 90 games this year. Unless they bring up Archie Bradley quickly, which wouldn't make sense now because they're buried, because they're going to get buried very, very quickly, and then he can, give them a win every 5th day if he's really going to be that good. That would, I think, be the only way we're going to see them stop, because they just don't have any pitching at this point. So Arizona, we know, is no good. Chicago, they're not very good. And the Rockies missed Chris Sale in that series, so we know, they should have taken at least 2 out of 3, which they did. San Francisco, I still think they're overrated. The Rockies hit their 3 best starters coming around there, but I think they're going to run into some of the same problems that the Rockies are running into. Excuse me, the opposite problem that the Rockies are running into, where they're taxing their starters going deep in the game because they know they don't have rotation depth and they know they don't have their bullpen. I think that's going to be an even bigger problem for them come the middle of the season. So Rockies always lose 2 out of 3 there. So I guess that probably was the hardest opponent because just the Rockies always lose in that ballpark. And then these first 2 games in San Diego, the Rockies have not faced good starting pitchers. So those, I'd say, would be the negative things to look at so far. You say, yeah, well, maybe the record's not good, but there's one very, very, very big positive. And that's actually in what at first looked like a negative. And that is, we talked about going into the season the importance of Yoeli Chacin, Brett Anderson, Jorge De La Rosa, and Tyler Chatwood, making a bunch of starts and, giving the Rockies quality starting pitching and winning a bunch of those games. If you look at what's happened so far, the Rockies have not won a single game because one of those 4 pitchers played well. We're 15 games into the season now. They've won 0 because one of those pitchers pitched well. Chacín hasn't been here yet. Chatwood's only made one start, gave up 4 runs on Sunday. They lost that game, and they came back, but he gave 4 runs, 6 innings, not very good. Anderson, it lost his first 2 starts, went 6 innings, gave up 3 runs, but was a little bit unlucky because he had the DJ LeMahieu error, which is unusual, which helped cost him the game in Miami. And then he gave up 5 runs, but only 3 earned against Arizona at Coors, and it was connected to a Nolan Arenado error. So again, that was a little bit unlucky. Then he was finally pitching well in the first 3 innings against San Francisco, game they won, but he only got through 3 innings because that was the game he broke his finger in, and the bullpen put up a bunch of zeros and they won the game 1-0. But they didn't win because they got a really, really great start on Brett Anderson. He did pitch 3 12th innings, but it had much more to do with the bullpen somehow stringing 6 12th innings together. And then we know Jorge De La Rosa has not gone past 4.1 innings yet in a start, as we've already mentioned. So, now, they did win 1 of his 3 starts because they gave him 9 runs against Arizona. But basically, they've won 2 games with Chacín, De La Rosa, Chatwood, and Anderson in the mound. One was the game Anderson went 3 innings, and the bullpen put zeros up the rest of the way. And the other one was a game where they gave Jorge De La Rosa 9 runs. So, the reason why that's somewhat encouraging, even though it's discouraging what's happened so far, is number 1, the Rockies have survived that by going 7-8. Maybe a little bit of need to schedule, but, they're still there. They're still close to 500. And, I lost my train of thought there. But one, because they've gotten through those games, these games 7-8 without any quality starts. And the other thing I want to hit at here is that the Rockies still are on pace to have all of these guys healthy by the middle of the season. So in other words, that there would have to be another major injury that would knock any of these guys out for the season. Like, okay, Chacín's not there right now, but he should be back by May. Brett Anderson broke his finger, but he should come back by the middle of the season and still be beneficial to the team in, July, August, September if no other injury happens. Chatwood is healthy right now. De La Rosa is healthy right now. He just, can't mentally get through a game. So the good news is that there's still a point. They're still on track unless there's more injuries, which there probably will be the way that Major League Baseball is going this year. But they're still on track to get to a point where they can have these starters start reeling off quality start after quality start at some point in the middle of the season. Because I don't think any of these guys are a true ace. I think they're all above average, and I think the rest of the team is pretty good. The other 2 positives here. Number 1 is that the Rockies have gotten the 7-8 record by playing more games on the road than at home. That is always a good thing. 9 on the road, 6 at home. So even though the teams are not that good, the fact that they played, even though I don't think the teams that they played as a whole are very good so far, the fact that they played 60% of the games on the road cannot be discounted because we know they're almost always going to have a better record at home than they are on the road with the Rockies. And the third thing is, and this is I think going to help save your bullpen and is going to help them win a lot of games. This team catches everything. My goodness. I mean, when the Rockies put that defense out there last night, you got Arenado at third, Tulo at short, LeMahieu at second. We've talked all about that. Unbelievable defense from that part of the infield. Then last night, you sit Charlie Blackmon, but all of a sudden you got Carlos Gonzalez, Drew Stubbs, and Brandon Barnes patrolling the outfield when there's the marine lane when you can't hit the ball out. I mean, I don't know where you hit the ball against that team to score a lot of runs, and it played huge last night. I talked about it in the game, Rock. That catch that Drew Stubbs made, that he made look routine, that was anything but routine. I don't think Charlie Blackmon catches that ball, and I know Dexter Fowler doesn't get to that ball if it's last year. And that falls in as another run. There's still only 1 out. That inning might explode, and I'm pretty sure the Rockies lose that game. A lot of these things, these guys are so good on defense, they're allowed to say, oh, that's a catch, where other people will be, oh, that's a base hit. Well, in this case, all these defensive plays that the Rockies, I think they've saved a couple of these starters, and it's hard to measure because, like we know, defense is the hardest thing to measure. But you just look around; they cover some ground on defense, and they catch almost everything. So that's something to continue to watch, and that's not going to go away throughout the season. That defense is something that holds throughout the whole season, even when your pitching starts to show some cracks in it. So those are some very, very good things that we saw. So we'll see which one plays out more. There's some things to like and there's some things to dislike so far. So it's just an interesting little start there to the baseball season. They've had some bad breaks, but they haven't had knockout punches yet with injuries. So we'll see how that progresses. And then the other thing we've got to talk about, because this is something that's a major problem across baseball. I haven't gone through the comments in today's Rock Pile, so if somebody brought it up, I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but the transfer rule around Major League Baseball has to go. Because, and if you're not familiar, what umpires are essentially doing is, they're calling a ball dropped at any point in a sequence between a catch and transfer and getting ready to throw the ball, a hit or an error. The runner is safe if the ball is dropped at any point when the outfielder or the infielder is catching the ball and transferring it to go throw the ball. And we've seen this with Elliot Johnson in a game with the Indians, where the runner was called safe, where he clearly caught the ball and was just trying to throw it back in and dropped it. We've seen the Texas Rangers Ron Washington, the Texas Rangers manager, went ballistic the other night when the catcher dropped the ball in the transfer when the runner clearly should have been out. But where this is becoming a problem, and it's because Major League Baseball doesn't interpret these two things as the catch and the transfer as two separate acts anymore. They're saying, well, if it's dropped at any point in the sequence, it's not. And the reason why they're doing this is because they don't want it to be replayed. So a lot in the past, we saw a lot of times where a guy would catch the ball and then would drop it, and then they would say, oh no, that was on the transfer, so the runner's still out. The Major League Baseball doesn't want to open up that can of worms to the replay, so they just told the umpires, okay, anytime it's close, just call the runner safe, so it's clear, and the outfielder and the fielder knows that they have to maintain possession of the ball all the way through the point where they're throwing it. Well, here's the problem with that, and I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, and I think it's going to happen very, very soon, and then Major League Baseball is going to have to change the rule in the middle of the season. And that is a middle infielder, any infielder, but particularly a middle infielder. It might even be Tulo or LeMahieu, because they're both very, very smart when it comes to stuff like this. And I've watched this very, very closely, but the situation has not presented itself yet. If there's less than 2 outs, and there's a man on first, or men on first and second, and there's a line drive at right at one of the infielders, now drop it intentionally on the transfer, because it's a free double play. It's an absolutely free double play. It's basically the infield fly rule on a line drive, except the ball's coming in. In the past, if there was been a first and second and 1 out, and the ball was hit at Tulo, and he intentionally dropped it on the transfer and tried to get a double play, they would say, no, that's a catch, and then you drop it on the transfer, the batter's out, the runner's at first and second. Now, if there's a line drive out, you can intentionally drop it, pick up the ball, step on second, fire to first, innings over. And that is garbage if they're going to allow that to happen. And it's not going to take long, but you watch. Infielders in particular are going to take advantage of this rule as soon as they start figuring out a little bit more. I haven't seen a situation really present itself yet where that can happen in a Rockies game. I've been watching for it closely. I last couple of days looking around Major League Baseball, but it will present itself for teams. And the infielders are not dumb. They're going to figure this out, and when they do, Major League Baseball is going to have a big problem on its hands, because that is not at all the way this game it was designed to be played, where these infielders are going to be able to pick free outs off a line drive, and they really shouldn't be for it. So watch this transfer rule, because a lot of managers are not happy. There's already been a couple of asinine plays, which I guess is how the umpires were told to call it, but it's just not going to work. And this is a problem that's going to get bigger before it gets smaller. So that's our video for today, and we will see you next time.